Hey, welcome back to Quiet RC. I'm Rob. Today we're going to talk about my Micro RS4 project. And maybe in the process we'll find out why I torture myself with these small scale cars. Ugh. Shh. All right, let's talk a little bit about the HPI Micro RS4 here. This is not the original body that came with it, but we'll get to that. So the Micro RS4 was early 2000s that HPI came out with it. At the time, HPI was, kind of the big name in the four-wheel drive touring car kind of world. Now, later on, they started doing these as a ready-to-run kit, as like a drift kit, but originally these were, and this is what this one is, a standard kit that you build, four-wheel drive, belt drive. HPI was out of California originally. In 2016, it got sold to a British company. And then now on their website, they say as of 2019, it was sold to a Scandinavian country. So, Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, one of those. So anyways, so I actually had just been thinking about the one that I had, in the early 2000s and kind of popped onto eBay to see if they were still around or whatever, and came across one. There weren't any that were just new in box at the time that I was looking. Usually I don't like to buy used cars. I don't really like to buy like ready to run stuff, but I put in kind of a low offer and they accepted it. And next thing you know, this thing was on its way to me. The box arrived in pretty rough shape, some water damage. They had that in the pictures on the auction, so that wasn't a surprise. But inside had just literally everything that had come with the kit originally. The person didn't seem to have run it very much. At minimum, they maybe ran it inside the house, maybe on a carpet with like kids or pets around, because there was just some hair, but the chassis was in perfect condition. The body that it came with was the Nissan GTR, which is a longer wheelbase version. I think that's what's standard that they came with a kit, the 150 millimeter wheelbase version. My original plan was just to clean it up a little bit, play around a little bit, and then move on from it. However, once I figured out that actually tearing it all the way down and rebuilding it, because it comes with a full manual, wasn't going to be a big deal at all. So I tore it all down, fairly simple, left a couple pieces that were just together. At some point I realized it had a broken pinion. One of the test runs I did, it was clicking, wasn't meshing correctly, and just inspected it much closer and much more closely, and saw that the pinion was actually broken. Now, I went and ordered another pinion set, which was kind of actually a tree, but then I realized that when they originally provided the kit, they offered 3 different pinion sizes. The instructions, just kind of as built, were for the 9-tooth. So I actually just went ahead and just clipped off the 11-tooth pinion that was there and just kind of waited for the part that I'd ordered that I didn't need to arrive. Part of getting it ready to rebuild was getting the old servo tape off, because you actually, when you mount the servo, you don't mount it to any tabs or screw it together or anything like that. You are actually just putting it on servo tape. Now, there is no information in the manual about using any specific size servo. The assumption is, especially back in early 2000s, more readily available and less expensive were just kind of standard size servos. So it can take a standard size servo. I went and got just a mini, not like a micro, but a mini high-tech servo that could go in there, and that way I didn't even actually have to clip the ears on it. So if I want to use that in something else later on, I can. The kit does come with like a little plastic tool. Part of that plastic tool helps you to align the servo, because obviously if you're just kind of like smashing it onto the chassis, there's really no way to know exactly where it goes. But you take this tool, you kind of stick it up through the bottom of the chassis, and you just mount the servo kind of and the servo horn right over that tool, that alignment tool, and it helps you get it in the exact spot that you want to. At some point, I decided that I wanted to get a new body for it. Again, I like to paint my own bodies. As you can see, I've done this one here, and I'll show you some of the steps in that as well. The body it came with was a 150 wheelbase. Again, that seems to be just like how the kit has you put it together. Now, I went out and went to Team Blue Groove, found some of their 18th scale bodies, and decided on the Porsche 959. The original Porsche 959 is all-wheel drive, so it seems apropos for this. And one of the things with that is it's actually a shorter wheelbase. Now, if you do the math, the actual wheelbase of a 959 at 1/18 scale is like 126 millimeters. The short wheelbase version of the Micro RS4 is 140. So you can kind of see that it's not perfect here, but it's not a static model, it's a RC car. I ordered the belt because you actually have to change the belt. It goes from the 150 millimeter belt to the 140 millimeter belt. You can see on the belt that it actually labels it as the 140 millimeter belt. You'll also notice that in the instructions, it shows you that you have two different mounting positions for both the chassis and the top plate where the suspension mount goes. So you'll see that it's exactly 1 centimeter, 10 millimeters apart. So that's how you shorten it down. You actually bring the back forward, the back and the motor forward a little bit. The diff is really interesting. In back, it's just a regular gear diff. I cleaned it all out, put it into degreaser. The front is interesting because it just ends up being this kind of purple anodized tube. And when you're putting it together, you have to be really careful. You kind of slide each gear in from either side of this assembly, so when they're in the middle, they're lined up, and then you slide the whole thing into a tube, and that is your front differential. It's pretty tight, which is fine. There's not a whole lot of competition going on with these, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, so the last thing that I had to figure out was the battery. Now, in the kit, they provide all the pieces to kind of create your own 4AA battery holder that clips in to the chassis. I didn't really want to do that. Obviously, I wanted to use something a little more convenient and rechargeable, even though technically I do have AA batteries that are rechargeable, but that piece didn't really seem to be worth it for me. What I did is I had a small 650 milliamp LiPo from my JRX2 Mini here. And so I decided to see if that would fit, and it really just fits super snug into the chassis here, right in between the top and bottom chassis plate. And I ended up using kind of a spare plate that HPI provided you. I'm not even sure what it was originally for because I couldn't find much information in the manual on it, but I use that to kind of make my own, not really a battery mount, but just a plate that would keep the battery in place. Because it fit so snugly, all it needed was just a little bit of like forward, aft, and side to side kind of restraint that would clip into. So once I got that figured out, that was good with that. Now for the electronics, one of the things they advertised originally is that you could just use standard electronics. I mean, it would be really tight with like an old Novak or even a Tekin or something like that. It would be super tight. You'd have to get a pretty small ESC at the time. However, again, out of my JRX2, I had replaced some of the electronics in that, and I had a combo receiver ESC, which meant that I now had a remote that I could use for it, a transmitter that I could use for it. Put that in there. So that just is one unit that goes right in there. The servo, again, is the only electronic part that I bought. The belt is the only thing that I had to buy just because I wanted to go shorter wheelbase. But really, in the end, those are the only two things I had to buy in addition to the kit, obviously. For the body, as I said, I went to Team Blue Groove and found this. Doesn't come with decals. I really wasn't looking forward to doing all of the window trim and everything like that. So I went over to MCI decals and was able to find the 1/12 scale Tamiya Rotham's 959 decal set. But what you can do on their website is you can actually select a different scale that you want those decals in, because they just print them for you as you select them. And I even changed one of the colors of one of the pieces that I ended up not using on here. But I ordered it, scaled it down to 1/18 scale. They sent it to me. I got it, but it just wasn't quite right. for this, so I kind of had to work around a few things, but in the end, the result is spectacular. Obviously, it's my own made-up livery. This is my first time using the Mission Models RC paint. I was really happy with it. It sprays really well. The coverage is really nice. The colors that they offer are great, so I'm definitely going to be using them on some future projects. I kind of did this whole, tried to do kind of an offset, kind of right angle striping. I tried to do pearl white, but I backed it in silver, so it came out a little more silver. And I tried to do a little shadow work on it, but I kind of had to slowly progress through that. So I made a lot of extra work for myself, but it was an interesting challenge to do. I think I'm going to use this kind of paint scheme on a future project as well. So this was more practice than anything. Getting the fitment for the wheels and everything like that was really interesting. The body didn't come with any, markings for wheels because, wasn't an original HPI body of any kind. So kind of had to work on fitting those on and kind of tracing them out. And again, as you can see, it's a little bit bigger in the back than maybe I would want it to be, but I think it turned out pretty well. Kind of had to get a little creative with some of the light markers and also the window trim. I ended up cutting into fourths. So I got these nice, curves on it. You can hardly see where the seams are. Did a little magic with the side markers, cutting out another piece of the decal that I didn't use. The rear taillights, I also had to kind of trim so they would fit a little bit better. Front headlights are a little oversized. I could, if I wanted to, trim them up a little bit later. I think later on, I'm going to do a tutorial on decal placement because sometimes I see some other YouTube videos struggling with decals or doing a way that I think is more difficult than it needs to be. On Reddit, on the RC car subreddit, I'll see some people struggling with decals and how to get them to fit. So I might do a tutorial later on about that. One little kind of flourish that I did is for the back vent. I painted it black, and then before I took all of the protective film off, I just cut this little piece right here and sprayed a little matte clear on that. And so it makes it look matte on the back, but it's actually matte clear on the plastic body, and then it's painted from below. In my body painting tutorial a couple episodes ago, I did talk a little bit about how I use the matte clear on some other things. The wheels and tires, the way they work is you can select how the track that you want it to be. So already have discussed how you can adjust the wheelbase, but if you want to select the actual track, you just place them in these different slots on the wheel. So it does have a little offset track where it's narrower in the front for how I'm doing it and wider in the back. They do have these like little foam things that you're supposed to stick onto the wheels. There's only one of those originally included in the kit, and I didn't want to use the original 5-spoke wheels that the original owner had used. I wanted to use these kind of more BBS style. So I may find something to substitute that. I haven't even glued these on yet. We'll see, haven't decided. Let's see how it actually runs. So I took it to our garage where we keep a couple of our cars in and pulled those out. That concrete is new. However, I keep an old British Roadster in there, so you can imagine how much oil is on the ground. So got a little slipping around, but still was able to have a little fun with it. I think, honestly, if you had like a 3-car garage and put the cars outside, you can make an awesome course for one of these. Now, again, they're kind of harder to come by, especially on the like non-drift, RTR version. But I think you could have like a pretty awesome course in a 3-car garage. I mean, that'd be awesome on a rainy day. Open the garage doors and just have your own racing while it's raining outside. It'd be awesome. I then took it inside, tried to approximate a similar course inside, so we could be comparing apples and apples here. And on the hardwood floor, or LVP, it did okay as well. Ended up putting a little bit of traction compound on the tires, and it did absolutely nothing for that. But it was fun to kind of slide it around a little bit here, and it did grip okay. I seem to remember at some point these came with radial, or you could get radial tires that are a little softer, and I bet those would grip really well. Now, the one issue is that the turning radius is terrible. I'm not sure if I could get a longer servo arm, if that would fix it, because it does feel like I'm going lock to lock here. In fact, I'm looking at it. It does go lock to lock here. So I don't think there's really any improving the turning radius because even at slow speeds. So the way you got to do is just kick it out a little bit. At any rate, that is my kind of teardown, rebuild, and kind of little backstory of the Micro RS4 by HPI that they don't make anymore. So if you find one, I would say go ahead and do it. You can still get some parts for it, so it's worth picking up and customizing it how you want to. Again, Team Blue Groove makes 18th scale bodies, all sorts of them. I just happened to pick the 959 Porsche, but they make a ton of them, so you could really just make this your own. The body posts, the way they work, they're kind of infinitely adjustable. You don't have to snip them. There's a lot of options for this, and certainly indoor. It'll make a lot of fun. So that's my kind of wrap up on the HPI Micro RS4. Please, if this is the first time on my channel, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, and we'll try to put out a video once a month or so on something new that I'm working on. Thank you. We'll talk about more RC cars later.